My name's Sean Harris. I'm a visual artist. I work in animation. So I work with light and paper and other stuff that I find about the place. So I fell into animation about 10 years ago. I've spent most of the last decade making animated films, which combine materials. I love materials in the way that they feel, whether it's paper or wood or earth or stone. When I was in the States a couple of years ago, I encountered this beautiful little animation machine, a flipbook box, and being of an inquisitive nature, immediately dismantled and started to kind of sort of reverse engineer it. But it's the idea of somehow distilling a narrative which I would 2 years ago have given 25 minutes to, perhaps in a film, into 24 frames, into a 1 second loop. And so it's kind of almost like playing with an ultra haiku in terms of these ideas, which on the one hand are so fleeting, 1 second, but on the other you drive the flipbook box and you turn it and you make that animation run for as long as you want. So it's both a 1 second film, but a timeless film as well. The two spaces are amazing. They're architecturally almost like amplifiers for what's outside, both sonically and visually. Sitting here, it kind of seems as though everything that's out there, some sort of seed of it or essence of it is kind of sucked in, and you sort of sit in here and process it all. They're very interesting and very meditative spaces, I think, both of them. Looking back, I can see that I've probably been much preoccupied with the mythical. And so I think perhaps a lot of my work, people often comment on the fact that it seems quite dark, but I never really intended that, whilst I would acknowledge the fact, I never really intended it to be a spooky dark place. I think maybe I've been fascinated by the whole idea of archetypes, of symbols that transcend different cultures, different times. Perhaps, certainly for some time as a printmaker, I wanted to make work that could have really been made in any place, at any time, in any culture. And then I suppose what filmmaking brought to my work was the opportunity to place these paper cutouts, these inventions, within places. So to move out of the mind space and out into the world. And now I think perhaps that in playing with animation in a sculptural sense, with light in the landscape, maybe there's a marriage of the two in those dark symbols of the mind, or those pinpoints of light which might represent common human symbols within the mind, are now actually projecting themselves, literally in this case, into the landscape. Making flipbook boxes presented a solution to a knotty problem, which has actually stymied my career at various points in the past, in that digital projections are all very well, but they don't work very well out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I submitted proposals for a number of projects where I think they were lovely ideas and everyone agreed that they were lovely ideas, but it's, well, what's everyone going to look at during the day? And so flipbook boxes actually presented a really interesting solution to that, in that they don't present such problems. So initially, the idea of creating installations which combined call it analog animation, the flipbook boxes, with digital animation, very attractive from that point of view. But then actually starting to play with both as part of one piece, in effect, that would transcend day to night, I started to become fascinated by the different responses people made from flipbook boxes where the viewer controls the experience by driving it, as opposed to the digital projection where the viewer is a passenger. I knew from the start of this project that I wanted to do something that created a dialogue between both, that gave people the opportunity to explore the material that I sort of wanted to look at themselves via flipbook boxes, and then for dark to fall and for them to be subjected to this digital projection, which interacted with the falling light. So the piece is site-specific in that sense, and time, no, it's not time-specific, it's the complete opposite. It's responding to the light in the environment as well. Being here has certainly helped me to distill a body of material relating to how we interact with the landscape, which has kind of been accumulating for a long time. And the observatory has actually provided a really quite cherished opportunity to properly getting to grips with all of that stuff. Thinking back to last November when I applied for this residency, I thought one of the most pertinent and sympathetic questions was, how do you think that your existing practice fits to the objectives of the observatory, which you don't always hear, because very often funders give funding to an organisation to facilitate a residency, and there's a certain expectation in terms of the way you're going to bend your practice to fit that particular place. And of course there's always going to be an element of that, but I've always had the impression that that SPUD recognised that whatever we did here would ideally be part of a progression, rather than a beginning and an end and then a step off somewhere else. So, I mean, that's certainly the case in terms of where I was before I came here. It certainly has been whilst I've been here, and I very, very much hope that we will have the opportunity to transplant whatever it is, well, which is actually quite sort of, we know what it's going to be, to take it out into the landscape. So what we're doing through the event that I'm working towards, which combines the clockwork and the digital animation and a whole load of other sort of light and shadow based stuff, is lovely here. It is a perfect location in very, very many ways, both in terms of the partnerships and the practicalities, but ultimately I want to see it out in the landscape. So the next step will be to take what happens here out into the wilderness.